Hi, so today we're going to meet an artist who's pretty new on the South African art scene, and he's really blown me away with his incredibly dynamic paintings of urban landscapes in South Africa. So I'd like to introduce you today to Thabang Legobbia. Sorry, Thabang, I stumbled on your name there. An artist from Johannesburg. If you want to find out more about his bio, please follow the links that I'm going to be placing in the bio section, the descriptions. I'm also going to be putting some links in of Thabang's videos that he does. And in fact, this artwork that we're going to be discussing today is a still from one of those videos, but like many artists who are creating contemporary video art nowadays, it does also function as a standalone artwork. Hi, Thabang.
Hi, Lishan. How are you?
I'm fine. Would you like to tell us a little bit, first of all, about you, where you come from, how you got into art, what influences you?
All right. I was born in Soweto, and I moved to the Vaal in Everton, and did a bit of schooling there. And then I did a bit of schooling in Orange Farm. And while I was there, that's when I was introduced to the Africa Cultural Center. This is where I started my formal art training. I was doing that on weekends. And that was located at the current Potato Sheds. It's a mall right now, but it used to be this incredible space that was bustling with so much creative energy, ran by Benji Francis. And I moved on to the Artist Proof Studio, where I did printmaking for about 3 years. At that time, I was still at school, so I was traveling every day from the Vaal to the city. And it was quite an amazing experience. That's when I actually did fall in love with Joburg as a city. And it was, for me, the sense of freedom, traveling from where I was coming from to this space where I could totally feel like, I can absolutely do anything. And obviously, the possibilities of being open to be connected with so many amazing people was just incredible. So the sense of possibility that was brought about by Joburg is one of moving from one place to another. And it's some exciting times, obviously, at Artist Proof Studio. Then I went into UJ.
When I look, you talk about that sense of possibility, and I see that a lot in your art. Most of your art deals with the urban landscape. Correct me if I'm wrong. If you look at your paintings, particular as well, there's the sense of monumentality of the buildings. Here we also see the buildings and the streets are very much a focal point in your artwork. But your style being very expressive with loose brushstroke, and here with this drawing, you're very expressive mark making, does speak a little bit into the kind of edginess of the Johannesburg urban landscape. It's magnificent, but at the same time, it's got this kind of, it's got this veneer of, let's like say, it's like, almost like it's a thing that is, there's like a different edge to it. I don't know how to explain it. It's like when you look at it, it's not everything is what it seems. And like I see that with your blurred painting, like I say, like the blurred marks. Is that something that the viewer and myself is just reading into it? Or is it something that you're bringing into the art deliberately?
I guess it's something that that becomes more of an expression of how I, put down my brush marks or my charcoal marks. It just really has to feel spontaneous. And there's a point in the process of creating these works that it becomes so ecstatic that you really just go, and it almost becomes quite meditative, because you try to do the very same marks and they just don't work. I try to be as spontaneous as much as possible. So that's where the gestural marks come in. And, you can see when it's not exactly a gestural marks, and it's quite intended to be there. And in certain works, you can definitely see that. When it's intentional, it's to build up that sense of depth within the work and to at least like incorporate a bit of like space. A lot of the work is about space. It's about inviting the person into the piece, and it's about
like those converging
channeling
lines. Yeah, the converging lines of the streets. And then would you
That's
say
right.
also the gestural lines create a sense of energy, like the energy of the city?
It's a definite energy that you get out of the city when you're driving on the M1 and you're just about to get into the double decker, for instance, or on there, and for you from the Crown interchange, for instance, you seeing the city there, and as you go in, you definitely feel that energy, and that happens when you either haven't been in the city for a while. It's when you a visitor, you sense this incredible energy of the city. And that goes back to your point about monumentality as well. And the Joburg as a metropolis. I mean, I used to love making small cities when I used to play as a kid. And it used to be so amazing to have a sense of something that you created that you can control as a kid when you don't have that much control. And for me, it was that outlet to create something that I could feel that I could be, the mayor or be in charge. But as children, we tend to do want to have that sense of control and something that we, do get in charge of. So that stems from that. And obviously that monumentality of the landscape, of the cityscape that you have in the city is almost juxtaposed with you as an individual or as a small kid, that you small, but yet it is so big. And the possibility of regaining control out of it, the possibilities of making something out of yourself from this city. So it really is like subject that keeps on connecting to my childhood a lot. And I feel that everything is interconnected to that, hence the kind of gestural strokes that are quite expressive, hence the city itself and the kind of compositions that you find that are almost inviting to the viewer.
Just leading on from your speaking about making, a very important aspect of I think of your work, if looking at it across a range, you move from painting to drawing and then also filmmaking. Tell us about your approach to media and how media is relevant to what you make.
I try to do something that I feel like I should do at that moment. And if it could express the kind of feel that I'd like to end up with, then it happens. I think it's not to restrict myself within certain mediums. If there would be a possibility of doing a 3D experience of the city that you could actually walk into, then that would be incredibly amazing. Each medium offers its own possibility to how you could be introduced to the subject. So that allows you to, use it in the best way that it could express itself in the actual work, because the media does actually do that. A lot of people talk about charcoal giving back when you actually use it use it on textured paper. So the medium does give back. The medium of video gives back to having a sense of time and telling to introduce the idea of storytelling in a more linear way. Charcoal gives you that sense of time or feel that is quite, it feels quite yesteryear, yet you're doing that in the present time. But it also has a good sense of texture in it, and that's why I love it so much. And in those tones, you find little things that you wouldn't necessarily get when you're using the medium of color, for instance, acrylics or oils. So it puts the subject to its bare minimum. This is what it is, and that's it. You've stripped away all the color, and it's about the subject and what's happening in it.
In this particular artwork, for instance, the butterflies would probably be lost if the cityscape had been done in color. So it definitely there emphasizes the butterflies, and we will get to that just now when we look at colonialism, because and related issues like, for instance, migration, because I do think it does speak into that. But I would also just like to touch on the theme, which is covered very much by both the IEB and the National Senior Certificate curricula, about identity in South Africa post-94. Now, a lot of the artists that we covered traditionally in the curriculum that are in like the textbooks that are commonly used are artists that were already established pre-94 and therefore are identifying themselves, reinventing themselves. You as a young artist find yourself only in this space. There are obviously heritage connections to, and I mean, South Africa as an evolving nation, there's always this connection to the past. It's not like the past doesn't exist. But how do you find the process of establishing yourself as a South African in a new South Africa, in a democratic South Africa context? Or do you find that it's not really an issue, like that your art is establishing itself organically as you experience? Is it a thing? Is it not a thing? Where do you stand on that?
Yes, the idea is that the work is about space. And when you have space, there's the idea of time and memory. What was the space looking like the past 40 years? How is it going to be? Do I have the power to change the space? Can I make it better for other people? Can I make it better for myself? Those are the kind of things that influence my work post 94. The possibility of taking the baton and running with it and making something out of it. Just as we'd have like someone from West Africa would come into the city, for instance, to make a living, to grab that baton and lead the way. Whatever that's going to come of it is totally up to him. It's the freedom to explore parts of the city that possibly I couldn't have been able to explore in previous years, or at certain times. It's really important that we embrace those kind of things, that we do not forget how much it was difficult to move around, to appreciate space. The most essential thing is space, and you're restricted to move from one point to another, and that's frustrating. And now you do have that freedom. It's how are you reacting to that space once you have the gratitude to be inside this space? Me talking to you right now, then there's the fullness of life that comes out of that. And I think that's what comes across in the work, the sense of gratitude that really pulls through in understanding that you can be in the space and be part of everything. It's just incredible.
However, you do, I mean, if I think about the video that this is in, there is reference to the unresolved issues. For instance, there is the lady, you know, who's carrying the work on, or her shopping or her burden on her head, you know, sort of dressed in a traditional kind of domestic outfit. I mean, she's in a contemporary art piece that you've created, and yet that is still something that is a legacy from apartheid that we still find definitely very much part of society now. And there's another video that you created with a song that a colleague had written, you know, where you've got this sort of resistance and the raised fist. So you are still resisting, you are still addressing issues that are present in our contemporary South Africa that are unresolved from the past.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything is totally interconnected in this. I find myself here, and that becomes inspiration to what I produce. And because of that connections, that I might not be, others, a whole lot actually might be happening subconsciously. It's those that I choose to address that are more connected to what I feel is my memory of things, or the subjects that I choose to introduce. And that's issues of protest. And in some of the animations, you can see the kind of style, the kind of approach coming across from the works by, for instance, the likes of Dumile Feni, but also, of course, technically in others, there's a lot of William Kentridge. But the most important key, I think, is protest posters. And if you look at South African protest art, with its grunge, with its, you know, kind of like taking whatever you have to produce a message is really what's key. And you can see it in the intention of someone wanting to put up a message without thinking about what kind of material they're using, where they're gonna place it. The key thing is to put your message out there so that it can be heard. The kind of treatment is the one that you find in most of those animations that are recent, and especially in Msaki's music video, that it's got the grunge that feels quite poster arty in a way.
No, I absolutely love that piece. It's got a haunting quality to it. It's absolutely beautiful. So now that's going to bring us to a very interesting theme that is kind of very topical at the moment. And what I like about it, and particularly when the kids are engaging with it, is it's a theme that unfortunately at the moment has no resolution, but we really need to encourage kids to deal with the whole concept of colonialism and decolonialism, and then issues relating in South Africa to that process. So for instance, if you look at migration, you deal with migration in your art, and particularly in this artwork, and what it means. And if you think in South Africa with our issues of xenophobia, which is a very negative aspect of the consequence of migration, yet migration in itself is something that is inherent in humanity. I mean, it's like human beings have been migrating, you know, right from the beginning. That's how, you know, Africans, all human beings coming from Africa, migrated to the rest of the world. So I love the way that your work touches on that in this. It's got a very, like, with the use of the butterflies. Those of you who don't live in Gauteng won't appreciate this as much, but every kid watching this knows that between sort of January and February every year, there is this mass migration of butterflies from Gauteng. They actually fly across the country up to Madagascar. And it's like this white cloud that moves across the land. And particularly last year and the year before, it was quite spectacular. And so it's this beautiful metaphor for migration, and yet in our contemporary culture, there's a very dark side to migration, and it carries with it a lot more risk and a lot more sort of dark issues. And that ties into our concept of Pan-Africanism, because in Africa and in South Africa, we need to establish this identity of South Africa as part of Africa, and yet there's a resistance to sometimes unite with Africa, like I say, which comes across in, in xenophobia. So when looking at South African arts and art of other South Africans, just talk about how your art speaks into these issues.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of that happening, especially in the piece De Rubele that you just referred to, the moving from one place to another by intent. In certain instances, it happens because you absolutely don't have a choice. And it's very unfortunate when that happens. But when you have space, you will have the idea of migration. The South Africans past has never allowed for that kind of movement, and people were restricted to move from one place to another. And it's those kind of issues that you see interplaying when you speak of South Africa today, that we had been so oppressed to understand the idea of freedom of movement that it is very difficult to allow ourselves to accept people that would come even from as far as Zim, which is just next door, by the way, to come across and make a living. There's a lot of issues around competition where there's scarcity. And those are the kind of topics that you see coming across in the work. When you have Joburg, it's inevitable that you're gonna, not address those kind of issues, whether you like it or not. And when you see those coming across the work, it's when I'm trying to voice out an opinion and saying, when you have that three-dimensional space where that you should see on the actual video unveiled and placed in a flat surface, and you can still kind of sense the idea of space with Black Butterfly, and that the freedom they have to move around the space is in fact addressing the aspect of freedom of movement and being able to, move without any restrictions to make something better of yourself. So being limited to move or being restricted to move, and that's very relevant, is the idea that is of a fundamental human right. We don't live in countries, we live in the world. And this is the world that I'm born into. And I would love to embrace all of my opportunities everywhere in the world as much as I can. And it's very important that I exercise my human right to do that without any restrictions or hindrance by anyone. So it is really fundamental that we do address those kind of issues. The backdrop of our past makes it very difficult for people to understand that essential right to movement.
I think if we just go back and everything we said, the last theme that I addressed there, urban identity and issues of place, have actually been extensively covered, because at the end of the day, it's probably the anchor theme to your work is you definitely identify strongly with the urban aspect of Johannesburg. But what I must say, and I'd just like to add this as an end, the more I engage with your work, the more dynamic it comes across and the more alive it is. And again, when I'm looking at this picture now, listening to you talk, the sense of monumentality of those three zones of the structures. But then, like you say, the converging lines of the streets just bringing you in, and then the dynamic lines of the butterflies as they're moving in the foreground into those spaces. It does emphasize the space, and it gives this incredible sense of optimism. And if you look at all the artworks that you've got out there, you've got your series that you've got out right now. The name of that series, if you'd just like to tell us about the series of paintings that you've got out right now.
It's Vanishing Point.
Vanishing Point, yeah. They also, with a bright color, I mean, when you open up that link to that website, you just get assaulted with this incredible array of color. And it's very optimistic. And I must say that even though you deal with a lot of heavy issues, there's a lot of hope and a lot of optimism in your work. Is that an intention?
Yeah, I feel that I think there's so much there's a lot of like heaviness about things in the world that it's very important that we just really don't forget who we are, we shouldn't forget to not take ourselves too seriously, for one, and to try to really embrace the little good that we see as much as possible, because it'll keep us going for a very long time. The heaviness of subject that you find in certain works is when I feel that I have to make a statement and I have to say something about something, and that is directly linked to or inspired by protest art or some of the artists that I did mention. I guess it's really trying to find that outlet. There's a lot of like things that happens to us individually. There's a lot of people that might be going through like very difficult things, and I feel that it is important to balance that off with things that we can embrace that are seemingly delightful and bring out the light-heartedness in anything. And that happens with space, because when you're in space, you can decide to see it whichever way that you want to see it. So that allows you to like kind of in a way decide whether it brings you joy or it brings you heavy-heartedness. But I tend to think that when you're in a space and you're looking at it for what it is, you can't help it but just like really feel an amazing sense of peace and joy in your heart. You are there and you're in space and you're looking at it without any judgment, and it's just there for what it is. It elevates you for being there as an individual, and you feel your sense of you being there with the space. In a way, it actually talks to you. Yeah.
And affirms you.
Yeah, it affirms you.
I suppose that comes into that urban, more that sense of identity, also tying back into identity of post-South Africa. Even if you're a person who's traveled a lot or a person from one place, you do have this sense of connection to yourself through your connection to the place.
Oh yeah, there's always a deep sense of connection with space. if you had been in Joburg years ago and you've moved to a certain place and you identify with one little thing, as little as like a paintwork on a traffic light, then it just sparks this incredible memory about the space. Suddenly, you have this pouring in of memory and amazing times that you've spent at that place. It really is about identity. We are the, what we surround ourselves with, or the space, I would say, in my opinion, make us.
And the people say, us and we make the space.
Yes. So you see, then it's this interplay of ideas there that I really find interesting, and you've put it like really, really nicely. I really love that analogy because it also relates back to the artist, the viewer, and the work. So that triangle exists in that too. You make the art, and the art gives back with certain memories, or giving you the space for your imagination to enter into it. And in that way, it becomes a two-way communication, which is something that I really love as an idea. I think it's just incredible.
Just even building onto that, I'm coming back to something you said earlier about the quality of charcoal being evocative of a memory state. And if we go back to your animation, and you say you were influenced, or you are influenced heavily by William Kentridge, and one of the things that William Kentridge talks about is in the process of erasing and redrawing, the memory of the previous movements is left on the surface. And that is something you also do incorporate in your animations, is that the movements are never lost. The memory of the movement remains in the animation process.
Yeah, which is like so distinct to his technique. And I made an informed I made a choice that I wanted to move away from the memory as seen on with the material, and I decided to use paint. It is so distinct, very distinctive to his technique, that it becomes part of his identity. And I want to form my own identity, and I want to blaze my own trails. And that is with the idea of not leaving any trails behind, but giving you the sense of movement and optimism with paint to just like charge forward and move to your very own direction without any a sense of feeling like you emulating too much of another person. So much inspiration in the earlier work came from him with the use of charcoal. A lot of work that's happening now is really me trying to find a voice, finding my own voice, and to just like really try as much as possible to individualize my own style without like trying too hard to come up with my own style, because that in itself is just like it's impossible.
Yeah. Well, I think it's been we as artists, it's completely folly to assume that we came up in a vacuum. Every artist can trace its, your artistic and creative lineage. So I don't think that's anything to kind of, if you look at the Fauvists, your work has a lot of qualities for me that is also quite Fauvist in that sense of wanting to find joy and freedom. Although it looks spontaneous, it's very much calculated. But the Fauvists as well, there was a lot of, you can see references to Cézanne Gauguin or Van Gogh in things like choice of color and brushwork. So the fact that you are, like you said, picking up a baton from William Kentridge is not, it's not, there's nothing ignoble in that. In fact, it's great.
Exactly.
That's how it works.
Yeah,
it's how
absolutely.
it works forward.
Everything is so connected, and it's like this cross-pollination of ideas, and it becomes more exciting when that happens. You suddenly have this whole world full of ideas and things that out of it you can like really come up with your own story from this whole spectrum of artists, of people, of what's really happening around your life. And that's one thing that we should embrace. I'm not for coming up with styles or attempting to coming up with the thing that will be individual. That happens naturally, and the fact that I'm me and that I'm doing what I'm doing, then that's something that naturally will come across as being of the kind of work that I do. But especially in terms of collaboration, you see collaboration becoming magic when people have let go of their sense of styles and just being able to open up and engaging in such a way that it becomes a truly collaborative work. And that's just amazing. So that's true.
Well, Thabang, sure, I've learned so much today and I've really enjoyed it. I definitely am going to be getting hold of you for some future projects. And like I say to the pupils, just follow the links in the bio section of the YouTube video to the other YouTube videos that Thabang has posted on his channel. Of course, like and subscribe his channel, and then also to the different web pages. And thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much. It's always amazing talking about the work, and thanks for inviting me. It's been really incredible. And when you start talking about the work, you start learning things about yourself too, and you start learning more about the work. And I think that's what it's all about.